Jaybird here. I wanted to throw a quick shout out to all my friends and family whom which I've made pizzas for, and they've all requested a copy of my recipe, and my recipe is a little entailed, so I wanted to shoot a quick video for you guys who I've given you my recipe on how I make my pizza dough. So as you all know, I make my pizza dough. We start with beer, and I boil the beer to make sure that we can develop the gluten during the pizza dough making process. And so I've tried lots of different beers, and the one, oddly enough, that we've come up with that we love the most is made out of Coors Original. And so we're gonna take these 3 12-ounce bottles of Coors Original, and we are going to boil them to get rid of all the alcohol. I want to get rid of the alcohol so we can make sure that we can develop gluten, and gluten has a tough time being developed in the presence of alcohol. And what this does is this will condense all the flavors in the beer, and all those really rich flavors will come out in the pizza dough. So this is 36 ounces of beer. I'm gonna boil this down to about 20 ounces. That's gonna take about 20 to 30 minutes. So we'll come back and we'll get started. So one thing you have to that you will want to consider when you're boiling beer, it is going to want to foam like crazy, okay? Because all the carbon dioxide is trying to get released out of the beer, and when it's doing that, it's grabbing a hold of the proteins in the beer and trying to bring them out as well. So while you are boiling your beer, you want to make sure that you keep a very close eye on it. And generally I start with about medium heat, wait till all the foam will start to dissipate, and then I can start turning it up a little bit. But while this is getting ready to boil, okay, one of the things, because we're using yeast, I wanted to show you how I rehydrate my yeast. So what we're gonna do, and most everything that I do in all of my recipes, I do by weight, and generally I'll do everything by grams because I want to get it as accurate as I can. So my recipe that I've developed over the course of the last several years is 40 grams of warm water, and I like to keep my water about 90 degrees, roughly, pretty close, 89, there we are. So 90-degree water, and we're gonna do 40 grams of water. And then I'm gonna go ahead and zero this out. We're gonna do 6 grams of yeast. Again, I like to do my work right here while I'm watching my beer, because Jacob, if you take a look down in here, you'll see it's starting to foam, and it's really going to start foaming like crazy. So anyway, here we are, we got 6 grams of yeast. You can use 6 or 7. And I'm gonna pour this in here. One thing to note, I am not going to stir this. So I just want this to just rehydrate. If I stick a spoon down in that, it is going to stick to my spoon, and I will have a very difficult time getting it off. So you can just put that down in there, let it rehydrate. It'll take its time. We got plenty of time. Okay, so we are back, and our beer has boiled for almost 20 minutes. And so what I do is I actually take my beer towards the end of the boiling process and I weigh it, because what I'm looking for is I'm trying to get 510 grams, maybe a little bit more, just in case I need to add a little bit of liquid towards the end of the mixing process. So what I'm going to do is, so we've got our beer, it's been boiled for, like I said, about 20 minutes, and we have to get this below 90 degrees. And the reason for that is because if we put this 140-degree boiled beer in on top of our flour and then throw our yeast at it, it's going to kill the yeast, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start compiling all of our stuff and mixing everything together while this is cooling. And then when this is cooled, we will be able to actually put it all together and mix it all. So first things first is, one of the things that I do add is a little bit of fennel. And to use the fennel, I actually crush it because I want to make sure that I don't have big chunks of fennel in there, okay? And so those of you that have had it, you get the flavor of fennel without that big heavy seed, okay? And we're not going to use a lot. Fennel is a very powerful flavor, and we just want it to be very subtle. So in my recipe, I'm using a 1/4 teaspoon. And so I've got a 1/4 teaspoon, and I'm actually just going to use my rolling pin and just kind of crush it, okay? You know, there's all kinds of ways to do this. This is how I do it. You guys can do it any way you want. Okay, so that's just gonna go in our mixing bowl, okay? So my dough starts with white unbleached bread flour, and I'm lucky enough to live in a town that has its own flour mill. So I use Moore's flour mill. They crush it, or you know, mill this daily, and so we get some very, very fresh flour. So my recipe calls for 1,000 grams, and again, like I said, I like to weigh everything to make sure that I'm getting everything the way as accurate as I can. And so I'm going to go with 1,000 grams. So 1,000 grams of Moore's bread flour. We're going to use 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and we're going to use 1½ tablespoons of Italian seasoning. It's just a bulk Italian seasoning. I get it from Winco. Okay, and then we've got 1/2 tablespoon of onion powder, and we've got 1/2 tablespoon of garlic powder, and then we use 1½ tablespoons of sugar. Now the sugar is really going to be for the yeast to consume. Now I like to mix everything together really well to get all my spices and everything mixed together, okay? And then we're gonna add just a sprinkle of minced garlic, okay? Not a lot. Okay, so I'll get this mixed together really good, and then we will come back after our beer has cooled down, and we will blend this all together. Okay, so our beer has cooled down to about 90 degrees, and now we are ready to go ahead and bring everything together. And so what we're gonna do is the recipe that I've developed calls for 510 grams of boiled beer. So I'm going to go ahead and measure that here. And if I run short, like I just did, which means that I boiled it a little bit more, then we'll just make up the difference with some water, okay? Okay. So now what we're going to do is we are going to make a little hole in our flour mixture. We're going to dump in our boiled beer. And then we're going to go ahead and get this in our mixer. Now, if you look right here, this is my yeast. This is our 40 grams of water and our 6 grams of yeast, and you notice it's nicely hydrated. It's nice and creamy, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and get that in as well. And then we're going to throw our mixing hook on there. And all I'm going to do here is just mix this together for about 2 or 3 minutes. I'm not trying to knead my dough at this point. All I'm trying to do is just mix it together and incorporate all my liquids and my dry goods. And so we'll let this go for about 2 to 3 minutes. And then after that 2 or 3 minutes, I let the dough rest for about 30 minutes to an hour. And then I will start kneading this dough. And we'll come back and show you that process. Okay, so here we are. It's been about 30 to 40 minutes, and our dough has had a chance to rest. Again, now keep in mind this has just been mixed together. We haven't kneaded this yet. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take it over to our kneading table, and we're going to knead it and develop all the gluten. So I just washed my kitchen table, wash your hands really well, and then this can go in here. And so I have found that this works better to do this by hand than in my mixing bowl. I think you get a better knead. So what we're going to do is we're just going to start the kneading process. And what we're trying to do is knead it until we develop gluten. Okay? And so I'm going to do this for about 10 minutes or so. We can come back and I can show you what we're looking for when you've developed enough gluten. Okay, so we're about 5 minutes into kneading. I don't think we're there yet, but I'm going to show you what you're looking for. And so what we're doing is we're trying to get it to where we can get to kind of a window. You can see through it, and then you can pull it apart and it'll stretch really good, okay? So, without it tearing. See how it's tearing like that? So we have a little bit more work to do with it. We'll be back here in about another 5 minutes or so. This is a workout, so just kind of take your frustrations of the day out on your dough, and we'll be back. Okay, so I think we're there. We've been kneading this for about 10 minutes or so, and I'm gonna check it out. We've got a pretty good window. Stretchy, kind of nice, but that's kind of what we're looking for, okay? So now, what we want to do is, we want to get this into a ball. So we're going to just fold them over, tuck them, and then we're going to pull it over. We're going to kind of just get this into a good ball, okay? Now, what we're going to do is, if you notice there was no olive oil in my recipe, and all we're going to do is just put a little bit of olive oil into our bowl. I'm going to get our dough down in here, get it moved around and get it coated with olive oil, okay? All the olive oil is going to do is just help it from drying out and add some flavor along the way, okay? I'm going to get a little bit more olive oil across the top, just a hair. You know, we're not trying to put a bunch on there, okay? So now we're going to go ahead and cover it with cling wrap. And the way I like to do this is I actually like to cover the actual dough itself. So I'll get the cling wrap down into the bowl and cover it nice and tight. Okay, I'm do this with a couple pieces, and then I'll actually cover it across the top as well. When I do this, all I'm trying to do is just make sure that this dough doesn't dry out over the course of the next couple days. It's going to be really active, and we are fermenting it, so it's going to get big. So by tomorrow morning in the refrigerator, this dough is going to be big, and I just want to make sure that the top, when it does actually reach air, doesn't dry out. So we'll see you tomorrow morning. Okay, so here we are on day 3. So for the last 2 days, about every 12 hours, we've taken our pizza dough, which looks just like that, and we've punched it down just like I showed earlier in the video. We've folded it, we've kneaded it a little bit, put some olive oil over the top of it, put it back in our bowl, back in the refrigerator. We do that about every 12 hours, and so here we are, day 3. We're gonna go ahead and section it out and roll our pizza skin. I like to do fairly small pizzas. My pizza oven, as you guys have seen, is pretty small. So I do 230 gram balls, and that gives me about a 7-inch pizza. Okay. So now what we're gonna do is we wanna take this and we wanna give it some good folds, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and pull this over into a nice tight ball, just like that. And then we're going to go ahead and start flattening it out. And like I said, we're shooting for about a 7-inch, 8-inch pizza. And If it wants to stick to the table or your rolling device, you just use a little bit of flour. We're gonna try it without first. Let's use just a little bit of flour. You don't want to use too much because whatever you put down there, the pizza dough itself is just gonna suck it right out. Okay, so that's about it right there. So I look forward to having some pizzas with you guys. Cheers.